You are listening to the Original Geeks Podcast, hosted by Epic Roast God and Meme Lord for real, Ian Daddy Bones. Talking shit and throwing fits about all his favorite things, from back in the day old school to classics of tomorrow. The Original Geeks Podcast for over 10 years. The revolutionary force in offending everyone. Victory.
All right, what is up, everybody, to this impromptu, random, out of nowhere episode of the Original Geeks Podcast. I am Ian Daddy Bones, and today I'm doing something different. Recently, I went to Soundaround, which is a local business store here in the 607. They sell comic books, they sell CDs, they sell video games, DVDs, and you can trade in your stuff. You can buy used stuff. You can buy new stuff. You could buy previously owned stuff. And it's a really dope local business that I've been going to for over 20 years of my life. And recently, while I was at Soundaround trading in some toys and some merchandise, I was looking around the shop because they gave me the option of getting more in-store credit than I would have gotten in cash. And with the store credit, I was looking around the shop, and I'm used to Soundaround having all sorts of stuff, but for the longest time, I've been asking Jay, the owner of Soundaround, hey, I see you have like used video game magazines and comic books and whatnot, but do you ever get old wrestling magazines? Like, I'm talking 80s Pro Wrestling Illustrateds, WWF magazines, 90s WCW magazines, and all the other spin-off brand wrestling magazines that, you know, you used to see back in the day before everything was wrestling websites and whatnot. You know, you'd get your information through wrestling magazines and grabbing them at newsstands and whatnot. So I was asking Jay for the longest time, do you have wrestling magazines? And he told me he's got them in storage, and one of these days he'll dig them out of storage and have them available in the store. So when I was walking around Soundaround, I'm looking at the WWE figures and whatnot. And while I'm looking at the WWE and the AEW figures and all the loose figures in bags, I happened to look down at the ground and I saw 3 boxes full of fucking wrestling magazines. So I like lost my shit. Like, this is what I've been finally waiting for after all these years of asking Jay if he's got anything in storage. I finally found the wrestling magazines that he decided to put out in the store. So I dug through the box and I found some keepers that I decided to grab for the purpose of making content and videos for y'all. So I wanted to do that today with this episode of the Original Geeks Podcast. And we're starting off with a WWF magazine from September 1989 that I actually remember requesting as a child, and I remember what I was doing in life when I got this particular issue with Hacksaw King Duggan on the cover of the WW magazine. Now, WWF magazines were available in like grocery stores, magazine aisles. They were available in drugstores like Walgreens and CVS and shit, and sometimes they were available in convenience stores that had magazines and shit. So I remember back in 1989, I was 10 years old, and it makes sense for it being the September 1989 issue because that August 1989, my dad and my stepmother Karen got married. So, you know, my parents got divorced in 88, and by the end of 89 rolling into 1990, like both my parents like remarried and shit. So summer of 89, my dad and my stepmom got married. So when my parents got married, they went on their honeymoon. So when my parents went on their honeymoon, I went and stayed with my Uncle Steve and my Aunt Zena for a week. Rest in peace, Uncle Steve. And I stayed with them for the week. And I don't remember everything we did. I just remember spending the night at my aunt and uncle's house in their apartment, and I was there for a week. And as the week went by, we went into the weekend, and then once the weekend happened, I was able to watch my weekend wrestling. I was able to watch WWF Superstars, Wrestling Challenge, All American Wrestling, and rolling into Monday, I got to watch primetime wrestling. So, like, that Monday, when I was out with my aunt and we were running errands and whatnot, we stopped by this gas station here in Binghamton. And I remember looking at the magazines, and sure enough, they had the brand new issue of WWF Magazine that had Hacksaw Jim Duggan on the cover. And Hacksaw Jim Duggan just recently became the king of the WWF, which was a big deal back in 1989 because you had King Harley Race, and then you had King Haku, and then you had King Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and Hacksaw Jim Duggan would lose that crown to the Macho Man Randy Savage, creating Macho King Randy Savage, which would take Randy Savage to a different level in his career. And yeah, it was pretty fucking dope. I remember my aunt being very annoyed when I asked for the wrestling magazine. It was one of those, if I get you this magazine, you better not ask for another thing until your parents get back in town. So I remember thanking her profusely, getting my new wrestling magazine, and then going back to my aunt and uncle's house where I flipped through the pages of this magazine while waiting for primetime wrestling to start. And that was a dope moment back in the day. So I remember buying this shit as a kid. So I'm very excited to be able to flip through this issue with y'all today. So on the cover, we got Hacksaw Jim Duggan, King Duggan, wrestling's royalty. Ho! Then you got SummerSlam, Feel the Heat with our exclusive preview, The Rockers, Illegal Double Teamers, Sean and Marty Speak Out, Savage Interview, The Madness and his manager discuss Hulkamania, Rude Awakening, rudely interrupted by a wild warrior, and it says, in this issue, meet the Widowmaker, Superfly goes home, and Hillbilly gets a horseshoe. So WWE Magazine was absolutely amazing back in the day. So flipping open this issue, we are greeted with an ad from back in the day for Rascals candy. Get them before they get you. Basically, Rascals were like dollar store bootleg imitation Skittles. Like they were trying to compete with Skittles, and at the bottom of the ad, it's like made by the Chickle Company, Warner Lambert Company, and Chickle was like made gum and shit back in the day. But here you got your table of contents telling you everything that's going on in the magazine, and then flipping the cover, we got some advertisements. The 3 new WWE VHS cassettes. You got one for Demolition, the best of the WWF Volume 20. And you got fan favorites focusing on Superfly Jimmy Snuka. And in this bottom left corner, they're advertising the 1989-1990 WWF Fan Club. And then there's the Information Center. Now, normally this square would be reserved for the WWE Superstar of the Month, who's telling you that winners don't use drugs. And that's one of the best things looking back on these old wrestling magazines is when you see former WWE superstars who clearly had substance abuse problems actually having the audacity to tell you to not do drugs. Like, whatever you say, Jake the Snake Roberts. But moving on, we got Around the Ring, which was usually an opening article welcoming you to this month's issue of the magazine. And they're focusing on SummerSlam 89, which at the time, SummerSlam was still new. SummerSlam 89 was the second WWE SummerSlam pay-per-view they had since the event was created. So, it was still in its infancy, but they had their footing with the success of the first show, rolling into the second show. And as we all know and love today, SummerSlam never went anywhere. But on this page, we got an ad for the WWF Superstars American Technos Incorporated arcade cabinet that came out in 1989. Now, this was a big deal. American Technos was like responsible for like fucking Double Dragon and River City Rampage and shit like that. So the fact that they had the WWE license was a big deal, especially when WWE was getting its very first arcade game, back when the arcades were actually meant something, and people were going to arcades all the time. Like this game, the fact that this game existed in the arcades had hope that someday it would come to the Nintendo and even maybe the Sega Genesis. But it never fucking happened. It never got a home release. But because this game got created, it got followed up with WrestleFest, which is a legend on its own. But turning the page, you got WWE Fan Forum. And that's basically where the fans write letters and the editors get back to the fans with what they're writing in about. And clearly there's a question about Bret the Hitman Hart back before he even knew who the fuck Bill Goldberg was. And on this page, you got Wrestling Spotlight presents The Ultimate Warrior. Wrestling Spotlight was a special issue of WWF Magazine that would come out like quarterly, a few times a year. That one's focusing on The Ultimate Warrior. Speaking of Wrestling Spotlights, I actually have this Steiner Brothers Wrestling Spotlight that I grabbed that I'm going to talk about on a future video. But going through, you got Jesse the Body Ventura. Back in the day, he had his own body language section of the magazine. And there you see Jimmy Mouth of the South Hart advertising. You could save 42% by subscribing to WWF Magazine. Then you got Bobby the Brain Heenan throwing a bitch fit, getting into it as usual with not only Gorilla Monsoon, but this was the 1 year that Tony Schiavone was employed by WWF. On the personality profile, you got Hillbilly Jim, who was basically like the 80s version of Tugboat. Congratulations, Fred Ottman, Tugboat, for being inducted along with Earthquake into the WWE Hall of Fame. And right here is an advertisement that's worthy of being framed and thrown on your fucking living room wall. Double page, WWF Superstars of Wrestling ice cream bars. CM Punk would be busting a nut in his pants right now if he had this shit. But there you go. The magic, the deliciousness of the WWF ice cream bars, complete with an assortment of all the various random trading cards you can get. And these things were a big deal back in the day. You have no idea. But here we got the WWF monthly interview. Every month, WWF Magazine would sit down with a superstar and they'd ask him questions and shit about the current goings on. You know, they didn't really break kayfabe back in the day like this. They kept it to like television and storyline purposes. But, you know, it is what it was, and it's part of what made it so magical back in the day. But this month, it's Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Sensational Sherry coming off of WrestleMania 5, losing the WWF title to Hulk Hogan. But this issue hit newsstands just as Jim Duggan got the crown before he lost the crown to the Macho Man, creating the Macho King Randy Savage. So this is like Randy Savage's last magazine interview before he became the Macho King with Sensational Queen Sherry. So, classic. We're rolling into it. Battle of the Titans. Dun-dun-dun-dun. Battle of the Titans was a monthly staple in WWF Magazine. They'd always focus on a match from whether it was Superstars, Wrestling Challenge, Saturday Night's Main Event, whatever the fuck. They focused on a match between two superstars. And basically, Battle of the Titans was the magazine equivalent of what would be a staple on Monday Night Raw. Like when Monday Night Raw would start, and you'd start seeing superstars take on actual superstars instead of, you know, name brand superstar taking on a jobber or enhancement talent every week. You know what I mean? So the fact that it was Tito Santana versus Mr. Perfect, neither one of them are jobbers. Neither one of them are facing a jobber. So it's a nice picture article, focus breakdown of the match. And yeah, these were in every issue of the magazine. But right here is what I am most excited about. This is the type of shit that I would buy these magazines for as a kid. Okay? This fucking breakdown of the pay-per-views, because the pay-per-views were so young back in the day. You know, you had WrestleMania, but WrestleMania was what you had. You know, given the calendar year of 1989, like WrestleMania 5 just went down. Okay, the first televised Royal Rumble went down in January with Big John Studd winning that shit. So it's like this is the second SummerSlam they're preparing for. SummerSlam 88 started that shit. So where we are in WWE right now in 1989, there's been 5 WrestleManias. We're on our second SummerSlam, and the Royal Rumble just began. Okay, the cover of this magazine, Hacksaw Jim Duggan as the king of the WWF. King of the Ring wasn't even a pay-per-view until 1993. So there's so many seeds being planted into the ground on how this company would continue to elevate and grow. So SummerSlam 89 was a big deal. You had Hulk Hogan teaming up with his best friend and his weed carrier, Brutus the fucking Barber Beefcake, BTFB himself, and they're taking on none other than, I believe at the time, it's going to be Macho King Randy Savage teaming up with Zeus, who was in the motion picture No Holds Barred this spring and summer with Hulk Hogan. So that's where there's the crossover match. Basically, a lot of people, wrestling fans, got introduced to Tiny Lister for portraying Zeus in No Holds Barred years before we ever got to know him as Debo in the Friday movies and years before he appeared in other movies. So this was our introduction to Zeus, and he's got that legend status. Mad people love Debo, love Zeus, love Tiny Lister. Like he's a legend. But this is like him having an opportunity to participate in the WWF. So this was celebrity crossover back in the day, even though he wasn't like a name brand celebrity. He wasn't like an A-lister, but he became a name brand celebrity from the first time you heard his name and seen him on television. You never fucking forgot who Zeus was. So this was your main event for SummerSlam 89. Hogan and the Beefer taking on Macho Man and Zeus. And flipping the page, like, this is a classic year, 1989. Look at this shit. You got the fucking rematch. You got Intercontinental Champion Ravishing Rick Rude defending that title. He stole and won from the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 5. They got their rematch. You got Demolition and King Duggan taking on Andre the Giant and the Twin Towers. Now, I got to go back and look at the results from this pay-per-view because, like I said, Jim Duggan is going to lose that wrestling crown to the Macho Man. So Randy Savage is about to evolve into the Macho King Randy Savage, but I'm not sure if in fact he got the crown before SummerSlam or if it was just after SummerSlam he got that crown. I got to go back and double check. But moving on, you got Dusty Rhodes versus the Honky Tonk Man, which is absolutely sick. Because there you see Honky Tonk Man in all of his glory. Like, I got an action figure of Honky Tonk Man wearing that fucking blue Elvis jumpsuit, and he looks absolutely sick. You got the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And what's so great about this is Dusty Rhodes' infamous polka dot run in the World Wrestling Federation. But with 1989 going into 1990, like, we haven't even met Dustin Rhodes. You know what I mean? We haven't even seen Dustin debut in the WWE yet. And this is years before Cody Rhodes would ever think about calling himself the American Nightmare. And, like, look at this shit. There's just this whole page is just full of Hall of Famers. It's absolutely sick. But turning the page, filling out the card, you got Jimmy Superfly Snuka taking on $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase. And at this point, the $1 Million belt was like recently, if not just created for him, for his character. So that was like introduced to television, and that was such a big deal back in the day. And there you see the Hart Foundation versus the Brain Busters. And, it's kind of weird because, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, members of the infamous Four Horsemen stable. But when they went to go work for Vince McMahon in WWE and they formed the Brainbusters, like, for what it's worth, the two of them together did not tag for long, but the fact that they tagged long enough to where they had such a chemistry and a bond as a tag team. And I'm not even getting into their, characters of whether or not they're heel or babyface. It's just the simple fact of, they had such good chemistry together for such a short a period of time that it's absolutely amazing how, like, the legend of the Brainbusters has, like, lived on for over the past 30 years. And there's so many tag teams that exist today that are influenced by the chemistry of the Brainbusters. Like most importantly, you got FTR in AEW. And for what it's worth, like, FTR is like if the Brainbusters and the Midnight Express had a baby to create the perfect fucking tag team. And that's saying a lot. And then looking at the Hart Foundation, like Bret the Hitman Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, like that right there is one of my OG favorite legendary tag teams of my life. Like, one of the reasons I watch professional wrestling is because I was flipping through the channels watching these two guys dressed in pink taking on these two guys dressed up as bumblebees, and I'm trying to figure out what the hell's going on right now. Like Bret Hart stuck out like a sore thumb to me as a kid, because you had, no offense to Neidhart, but it's like, as a little kid, I didn't know any better. You had the fat guy with the pointy beard, and then you had the other guy in the sunglasses that looked like his hair was soaking wet the entire time, just sticking his hands out, strutting like he's king fucking shit. And this guy's so badass, he doesn't even need to take his own sunglasses off. His partner has to do it for him. Like, I thought Bret the Hitman Hart was such a dope wrestler back in the day. Like, he was one of my early favorites that got me watching wrestling in the first place, was the Hitman. So I remember, like, you had WrestleMania 3 when it was like Hart Foundation and Tito Santana against Danny Davis and the... Or no. It was the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis against the British Bulldogs and Tito Santana. And then the following year, the Hart Foundation was in the WrestleMania 4 Battle Royal. And there was an incident with Bad News Brown and Bret Hart where, as a kid, it's kind of weird. I didn't really know the whole babyface heel thing when I was young. So it's like when Andre the Giant turned heel, like, I remember him being a bad guy and going with Bobby the Brain Heenan and being mad at that. But I didn't really understand, the terminology. But at WrestleMania 4, when Bret Hart had his altercation with Bad News Brown and he got double-crossed, and then Bret jumped him after the bell and broke the fucking trophy, you felt that I felt that baby face turn happening when I didn't even know what a baby face was, other than referring to him as a good guy. So from like 88 to 89, I thought Bret the Hitman Hart was going to be this solo singles guy. And it's like they tried, this is the era where they tried doing a solo run with Bret, but at the same time there was political stuff backstage, office shit going on with Neidhart, to where, for doing what was best for business and Vince McMahon's sanity, I guess, because of court case settlements and whatnot, it made better business sense for Bret to just be in a tag team with Neidhart until the time was right for Bret to break out on his own. So this is what I remember about SummerSlam 89, and it was, especially with like reading Bret's book, this was that period where Bret was like getting frustrated, where he was like, oh great, now I'm stuck in a fucking tag team again. And then moving on, you got Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig, and you got fucking, Jesus Christ, Terry Taylor's Red Rooster having ass. This was like the equivalent of WWE's like developmental signings back in the day. Not that there was anything developmental about Terry Taylor or Kurt Hennig, because with all due respect to Terry Taylor, if anybody's been running developmental systems for pro wrestling for like the past 25 years, it's been Terry Taylor. Terry Taylor gets shit on a lot, but Terry Taylor really does a lot behind the scenes. And for everybody that wants to take a shit on Terry Taylor, there's a lot of people that will gladly clean that shit up because they had the utmost respect for the guy. But this was that period of time where I remember, fucking Terry Taylor becoming the Red Rooster, Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig becoming Mr. Perfect, You know, they brought Owen Hart in and threw a mask on him and gave us the blue blazer. And then at the same time, they also tried giving Steve Lombardi a legitimate gimmick, so the Brooklyn Brawler was a character. So this was like, you know, one of the culmination of like, you know, both these guys, you know, having people know who they are, but they're still new to the WWE audience. Like Mr. Perfect was starting to really pick up steam with the Mr. Perfect character by this point in time. So it was great seeing Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam. But moving on, you got the WWF trivia. There was always the WWF trivia in every issue, and especially the issues that did come with a merchandise catalog because they were quarterly themselves. This was usually the center, the middle of the magazine. But flipping through it real quick, you got your Hulk Hogan merchandise. You got your Ultimate Warrior merchandise, including that fucking classic Hulk Rule shirt. You got that tacky ass old school Ultimate Warrior jacket that's got him like image on the back, and that fucking jacket actually comes with the Ultimate Warrior figure that comes with Papa Shango. And if you look closely right there, there's Stephanie McMahon modeling the Hulk Hogan hat. Let's see what else you got. You got your WrestleMania VCR game. You got your 8x10s autographed you could buy. They got, you know, all sorts of shit. Calendars, oversized t-shirts, little baby merchandise, the classic teddy bears, like all the babyface superstars got their teddy bears and shit. There's a Hulk Hogan one. There's your classic fucking back in the day t-shirts. Look at this shit. I would kill somebody to have this in my closet right now. You got OG Rockers jump off. You got the Randy Savage classic purple shirt with the sunglasses. You got the OG Bret the Hitman Hart. I don't even remember Neidhart having a shirt like that. You got the Bushwhackers t-shirt that really makes me wonder how many people bought that fucking Bushwhacker shirt. You got that Demolition classic that I really wish I had. You got the blue Mr. Perfect jump off Hercules t-shirt I never knew he had. There's another Jake the Snake Roberts shirt, even though I really like the green one. Beefcake with the fucking red ringer tee. You got Hulk Hogan with a freaking 24-inch Python shirt, but that Hogan shirt doesn't even look classic or anything. That looks like the type of bootlegged Hulkster t-shirts you'd see at Kmart or whatnot, or like they'd sell at fucking Caldor. But there's the classic Ultimate Warrior t-shirt, and just letting you know, the Mattel WWE Coliseum collection figure that's coming out this year, that Ultimate Warrior t-shirt comes with the actual figure. So the little attention to detail and extra accessories. But what else do we got? We got classic posters and wall hangings. You got your Hitman poster, a Miss Elizabeth poster, a couple of Hogan posters, classic Rockers poster. Again, a Bushwhackers poster. I don't know who the fuck was buying that. And then you got your classic Bret the Hitman Hart sunglasses. And, which kind of stupid looking at it, there you got Hacksaw Jim Duggan advertising and promoting the ugly navy blue WWF logo cap from back in the day. But this was before Jim Duggan had his had the stuffed 2x4s or the foam 2x4s. Yeah, there's the Ultimate Warrior wall hanging. That comes with one of his action figures too, actually. I believe the t-shirt and this come with the Ultimate Edition. But there's a Honky Tonk Man telling you to get back issues of WWF Magazine. But there's your cover mentioned article between Rick Rude and the Ultimate Warrior setting up their rematch for SummerSlam. Let's see. Then you got the Rockers making it crystal clear. Fuck you, Jesse Ventura. We do not cheat. They deny illegal double teaming. So the Rockers are explaining themselves. Now, if anybody cheats, it's the fucking Rougeau brothers. I mean, they may be all-American boys, but God fucking damn, they definitely cheated. There's Dusty Rhodes. Because I believe this is Dusty Rhodes just coming to the WWE. And honestly, too, yeah, because these are like Dusty's like dark matches. Because you can tell, because Dusty's not rocking polka dots yet. He's wearing basic black trunks, and yeah, that's setting up his feud with Honky Tonk Man at SummerSlam. There's your advertisement for the SummerSlam program that was available. And there's an cover story focusing on Jim Duggan beating Haku for the WWF crown and becoming king of the WWF. Then they have Private Eye, which was basically the closest thing this magazine came to breaking kayfabe back in the day. They're showing Jimmy Snuka on the islands, and this is the time back in 1989 when Jimmy Snuka was making his return to the WWF. And then they have the lowdown. This was usually your end of the magazine breakdown of like rumors and shit going on. Again, another example of exposing the business, but not really exposing the business. Then they got Wrestler's Rebuttal, where the wrestler will write an article bitching about whatever's going on with their storyline and character. In this case, it's Greg the Hammer Valentine and his feud with rugged Ronnie Garvin. Then you got the untouched WWF crossword puzzle. And now we're at the end of the fucking magazine. You got Caught in the Act, Dusty Rhodes working his common man gimmick on the back of a garbage truck like Duke DeRossi. But unlike Duke the Dumpster DeRossi, Dusty Rhodes does not touch children. And on the inside back cover of the magazine, we have the classic art-drawn SummerSlam 89 Feel the Heat promotional poster. And then on the back of the magazine, to end the video, we have an advertisement for the Acclaim Masters of the Game WrestleMania cartridge for the Nintendo Entertainment System, along with a cross-sell for the handheld LCD version of the game, which sucked absolute shit and was not worth ever being made in the first place. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Original Geeks Podcast. I'm going to be back doing more of these, and I think now I have a reason to continue to pick up buying old wrestling magazines so I can go through the issue from front to back cover. But thank you all very much for watching this video. If you support what I do, kindly leave a few words below. Smash that share button. Throw me a heart. Give me a thumb, chum, and let me know you like this shit. Thank you very much for supporting the brand. It's absolutely free. This has been the Original Geeks Podcast. And until next time, victory!